All right, well, welcome out to our Momentum Mindset Monday. Good to see many people on the call this morning. And we've talked a lot in the past about this idea of building momentum. I mean, it's in our name, but the idea is you build momentum by mass times velocity. So simple physics equation, right? As you start to look at how do you create momentum. But what I have found over the years is that there's a lot of things that come into the way of building momentum. That becomes a struggle for a lot of people. They're trying to build up their business, and what they find is that in their lives, oftentimes there is a time when they feel stuck. I know I've found that in my life. Like I've found different times where I have felt stuck, or I'm feeling stuck, and I feel that way in different aspects of my life. I also feel that way when it comes to various parts of my real estate business. Like I feel like I'm kind of stuck in my business. And as I'm looking at that, the question that comes back to is, like, what causes us to be stuck? Like, what is that process and why does that happen? Because I don't know of anybody who's ever gotten into the real estate world that hasn't gotten stuck at some point in the process. I was talking to an agent the other day, a newer agent who is getting into the real estate business. And it was interesting talking to this agent because the fear that she had was built around not talking to people because she didn't want to make a mistake. So the fear was, well, what if I talk to someone and they ask me a question I don't know the answer to? And what if I have a discussion? And what I've found is that the agents who have been in the business for a while, we're just used to not knowing everything. We've just gotten used to not having to have every answer for everything. And we're able to step into that. And that's an okay space to be in. But for newer agents, oftentimes that's a struggle. But then you get agents at different levels, they're building their business up, they start to feel stuck, and that becomes really hard to push their business forward. So as you start to look at that, I was thinking about that a little bit over the weekend. And I found this curve online. It's called this language learning plateaus. And you'll start to find this, and I think this idea, and this comes into place with like learning a new language, but I think this comes into place when you're starting to speak the language of real estate. And you start to look at building your business up. So you start to look at this beginning process. You have this burst for beginners. Like you start to come out of the gate. You go through the new agent training program. You're going to different classes. They're starting to take some new agent modules, and you start to find success, and you're starting to at least feel like you're making some dramatic progress, like the learning curve as you're just absorbing all this information. And then at some point in the process, you go to this plateau. And on this graph, it talks about this plateau of purgatory. And you get to this place where you start to now wonder, what do you do to take your business and your life to the next level? Like, what does it look like to get to the next place? And it becomes a struggle. And the hard part for a lot of people, they get to this plateau, is they intrinsically start to think, well, I got to go back to do the things that I did to get me up to this place. So they go back to the things and the actual items that got them to get to where they're currently at. But then what that does is repeats the process of getting them back to this plateau of purgatory again. Because it's repeating this over and over and over. And what you start to find is that to get to the next phase, what it really means is you've got to move to the next level. But that becomes really, really uncomfortable. And that's where oftentimes we get to this place where we're outside our comfort zone and we're feeling at this, I guess the term would be stuck. Like we're feeling like we're kind of stuck there. So as I was thinking about this over the weekend, I was kind of feeling that. Like I was looking at in my personal business and I was looking at in the brokerage growth, and I thought, I kind of feel like we're at this plateau, but then how do we break through to get to the other side? And I had some conversation with some friends over the weekend, and it kind of distilled down some core concepts and some things that I've looked at in my past that I've stepped into. And I just had to go back and remember some of the things that got me out of various different plateaus that I was in. So I started to go back and look at my life, and I looked at my real estate business, and I looked at some of the different key plateaus that I've been at in my history, and how I broke through to get to the other side. Like, what were the key things that got me to the other side to push through? So when you're feeling stuck, what I would hope is that you could take some of these different concepts and use them for your own, and be able to like become at least for me, it was kind of a recipe of success. So here we go. So it's going to be the simple acronym to remember this process is VHS. So for some of you that are younger, you don't even know what a VHS tape is. For some of you that have been around a little bit longer, you're like, yeah, those are super cool. We used to go to Blockbuster, and in my town growing up, we had this place called Talk of the Town Video, and that was the cool place to go to get your VHS tapes, to rent them for the weekend. And you were always trying to get the new releases before anybody else was fighting to get them. But right now, we're going to talk about VHS in your business to get you to the next level, to get you unstuck. And the VHS stands for these three words. VHS is vision, habits, and significance. And that's what your VHS looks like. So let's break these down a little bit and talk a little bit about it. So vision. So number one is when you're feeling stuck and you're feeling at a place and you're not sure how to get to the next place, or you're wondering like how to break out of wherever you're at. Well, you have to have a forward vision. And the secret to this that I've found is I have to act like the next year's version of me. So that might feel like it's going to be uncomfortable because I'm not that version yet, but I got to start to play into that. So when I'm feeling stuck and I think this is one of the key things that really sets the stage for me to break through being stuck, and that is seeing out further than where I'm currently at. So I can see out a certain distance currently. I start to look at my business and I start to think, well, my pipeline looks like this, or I don't really have as many listings as I want, or I don't have as many buyer clients as I want. Then if I get too caught up with the day-to-day in this process, then I'm going to feel overwhelmed. I'm going to feel like I'm stuck and I can't move forward. So the key to this is shifting the mindset and taking a step back and reflecting back on, okay, where do I want to be a year from now? Where do I want to be 2 years from now, 3 years from now? What does that look like for me? And I was really write out and put like pen to paper what that looks like a year from now, and start to get some clarity around it, and start to say, okay, I need to get to this place. This is where I'm going to be at. And so my current journey is I'm feeling stuck right now, and that's okay because I'm not going to stay here. In fact, the challenge I would say to you is, when in your life have things not always worked out? I mean, when has it not always worked out in the end? And I would challenge you to say it's always worked out. All the things that you have had as struggles and obstacles in the past, all the times that you felt that you couldn't get through, or you were looking at the day-to-day like, oh, this is so hard. This is the hardest thing I've ever come across. But you've made it through every single one of those things. Now, the things you're dealing with right now, that your current new hards that you're dealing with in your life, I got it. Like, we all have our own hards that we're dealing with. I've got my hard things that I'm dealing with, which some of you might look at like, those aren't even hard for me. And I might look at some of the hards that you're dealing with and I might say the same. I'm like, that's not a big deal for me. I might have already gone through some of those hards, or I might not have had to even experience some of those. But I would say that as you start to look out the future version, you've got to start to play a bigger game. So that's the vision part. Now we're coming to the habits. Your current habits are dictating where you're currently at. So whatever you're doing on a repeated basis, that is the recipe that you're creating for yourself. Like, you can't expect to bake a cake if you're following a recipe for cookies. Growing up, I remember my brothers, he was talking to my sister, and he was telling my sister about this amazing food creation. He said that what you do is you bake brownies and you build a chocolate cake on top. You make a brownie mix, you put your brownie mix in, and then you put a cake layer on top. And he's like, it's amazing. So my sister made this recipe of brownies on the bottom and chocolate cake on top. It was disgusting. It did not work. It did not come together. And my sister's like, what the heck? How did that not work? And my brother's like, well, I never even made it before. I just thought it would be really cool. I thought it was a good idea to make that. So my sister followed the recipe, but it wasn't even a recipe for success. And I would say many of us are following a recipe that might not be the one that we really want to get the success that we need. And so how often are we reflecting on what we're currently doing to get to where we want to go? Because we're the sum of our actions. So if we look on our daily actions and our weekly actions, that is what's going to create where we're going to be at 90 days from now. Like, our repeated efforts every day is going to be the sum of where we're going to be at. Okay. And then number 3. So we've talked about vision, talked about habits, Now we're going to talk about significance. Now, significance, what I mean by this is it's talking about your priorities. Like, what are your priorities that you currently have in your life right now? And I would say that your priorities are the things that you're giving precedence to. Those are the things that are surviving in your schedule that always are the non-negotiables. And I would say that for all of us, we all have certain priorities. The question is, are the current priorities that we have in our life the ones that are going to give us the results that we really want? And I would say oftentimes our priorities might be out of whack. Like, we might have certain things that we are holding on like as sacred things that might not really need to be that sacred. Like, we might be holding on to certain things that we say, oh man, but I can't do something different because this is what I've always done. And I'd say, yeah, you've always done that, and it's giving you the current results that you currently have right now. I think it's interesting all the time when I come across people who are trying to move their business forward and how they are so committed to holding on to the things that they've always done, and they want to repeat the same things they've always done as if that's going to give them a different result. Versus the people who come in and say, I am an open book. Like, I will start from scratch, whatever it means. Like, I will do whatever it takes to get to success. And I will do whatever I need to do to get to where I need to go. And I would say that in real estate, what happens is the first things that you start to learn is how to make money. You've got to understand how to make money in this business. Like, you're not going to be able to make any significant change in people's lives long-term, both in your life and in those that you affect, if you can't understand the principles of making money. You've got to understand how to do that. Like, you've got to understand how to be in relationship with people, how to be able to provide value, and then by you providing value, there's an exchange of services. Like, they're going to pay you for what you bring to the table. And you've got to understand that concept. And once you start to understand how to make money and how money works in real estate and the flow of resources, then the next phase is, how do you make money in less time? How do you make, well, I mean, technically you're making more time, but how do you become more efficient in the way of creating income? So many of you might understand how to make income by a certain time frame. So you might say, you know what, my best year ever was making 20 grand. It took me 12 months to do that. Well, how can you change that and make it so you can make 20 grand in 10 months, or 20 grand in 6 months, or 20 grand a month, or 20 grand every 2 weeks? Like, how do you shift that mindset so that right now you have a certain correlation of how much time it takes to make whatever money it is? And then you can consolidate that and break that down as you start to move your business forward. And that's where it starts to come down to this idea of having a vision. And the vision is a creation of, this is where I want to be. This is the lifestyle that I want. This is the impact I want to have in my world. And you start to shift the mindset of where you want to be. The cool thing about real estate is the ultimate vehicle to get you to where you want to go. There's no salary cap in this business. There's no one that's telling you how much you can make. You're the only person that tells that. It's your mental capacity. You're the glass ceiling that's holding yourself back. It's not us. Like, we aren't doing anything to hold you back. Like, we have no salary cap. In fact, we have the opposite model. We reward you for the more successful that you are. As you start to build your business up, you start to cap. You start to make even more money in less time. So we're rewarding the behavior versus giving you like a set amount where you can't make any more than that. It's very rare in this world. Even some of the most highly paid sales reps at other companies have models where they're kind of, they will start to get readjusted when they start to make too much money in their system. Not in real estate. Not in our industry. You have no salary cap. So the only salary cap is you holding it back. And at the same time, the habits, that's the thing that's going to hold you back the most. The habits that you have on a continual basis and your priorities, and be able to shift those and get those in line.